call the Monday, March 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Ash. Councilor Campbell. Present. Councilor Devine. Present. Councilor DeBona. Present. Councilor Harris. Present. Councilor Liang. Present. Councilor McCarthy. Present. Councilor Mitten. Present. President Kane.
Present. Thank you. Please stand with me if you're able for a moment of silence. Please use this moment as you will. Please turn to the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, please read the open meeting law.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, first item on the agenda.
First item on the agenda is the FEMA map update.
Thank you. Tonight, we have Commissioner of the Department of Public Works, Al Grazioso, to introduce this presentation.
Good evening, Mr. President, City Councilors. Tonight, we'll be presenting on the updated FEMA flood insurance maps. With me this evening to give the presentation will be Joe Shea from Granite City Partners. The City Council has adopted updated FEMA flood maps every 5 to 6 years. The last update was in 2017. However, our engineering staff works on these weekly, ensuring that FEMA is aware of Quincy's infrastructure improvements, which is paramount to having accurate flood maps. As we learned in 2014, FEMA can easily issue very inaccurate maps. City engineer Paul Costello continues to lead various flood inundation modeling efforts for the city, and our engineer Chen Sang has been the liaison to FEMA and the U.S. Geological Survey on quarterly and annual reporting. This has led to accurate maps and savings for our citizens that have to pay for flood insurance. This City Council has funded numerous flood protection initiatives and stormwater system improvements, from seawalls to pumping stations to outfalls and to tide gate repairs. They all lead to benefits for our residents, and when properly modeled by FEMA, they lead to accurate flood insurance maps. So at this time, I would like to turn this over to Joe Shea from Granite City Partners.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for having me. Mr. President, I'm Joseph Daniel Shea with Granite City Partners. It's a pleasure to see you again on a topic that I've worked on now for almost 20 years with the city of Quincy, and I'm quite happy to be back with what I believe is a continuation of the good news story relative to the city's efforts on FEMA flood maps and doing their best for accurate maps and as reasonable flood insurance costs as the city can provide. When we get involved with FEMA or any federal agency, there's a lot of alphabet soup. So this evening, as I go through a number of programs, I will do my best to call out the long names of the programs, but feel free to flag me if I gloss over anything. I realize, as the commissioner had said, we talk about this monthly, if not weekly, but the council gets updates annually. So bear with me, and again, feel free to flag me if there's any moments that I pass over items. So Quincy participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a federal program that includes 23,000 communities within the United States, and it is the structure that the federal government uses to establish a flood insurance policy and curriculum. It should be fairly obvious why we participate. Quincy's got a lot of water bodies. We're a coastal community. We've got brooks, rivers, streams, inlets, marshes, and all of these elements are incredibly important not only for habitat, for recreation, for the things that we typically talk about when we think about a coastal community, but they're also part of your flood protection systems to get the water out of the streets, out of the basements, out of the neighborhoods, and store it in the locations where it doesn't impact our constituency. The National Flood Insurance Program was created in 1977. Quincy was one of the earlier adopters in the 80s. And Quincy has received many map updates. As the commissioner had indicated, typically every 5 to 7 years, FEMA will update the maps. Between the early 80s and 2012, those map updates were very, very minor. 3 houses in, 2 streets out, very minor. However, everyone realized that in 2014, FEMA changed their methodology, they used new modeling, and they significantly expanded the flood zone, adding in thousands of properties in the city of Quincy into the flood zone, meaning thousands of property owners now had to pay for flood insurance that they previously didn't need to pay for. We also knew at the time that these neighborhoods don't flood. We know where we flood. We do have flooding challenges in various locations in the city. We knew the maps were incorrect. So through a progression of incremental amendments, incremental revisions between 2014 and 2017, we finally felt that we reached a map that was accurate, the 2017 FEMA flood maps. Well, we've now come full circle since 2017, and new preliminary maps have been issued. They will become effective on July 8th, 2025, with this body's approval. It's considered the new update. There will be an advertisement round. There will be a community meeting that Quincy is going to host, but new maps are coming. In parallel with doing all of the map work that was on the previous slide, as many of you know, the City of Quincy, through your policies and your funding support, have made programmatic improvements. Since I've been at the podium, since the rainstorms of March 2010, that many of you may remember, back-to-back 100-year storms, crushed us on inland Quincy. We've done a whole host of projects that the commissioner alluded to. The picture on this slide is the new and enhanced Strand stormwater pumping station along the Strand behind the former Beachcomber. The city has continued to programmatically do seawall repairs, drainage repairs, outfall repairs, tide gate repairs, pump station repairs, and understanding where the commissioner wants to continue to take the program, we'll continue to be as aggressive as we can be with seawalls and stormwater management. Some of the other items that get less fanfare, but really are of great assistance, is we've made a lot of technological advancements with the city's inundation modeling and the city's geographic information system program, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We've had some ordinance updates with respect to some of the approvals of ordinances this body put in place regarding management of construction sites, which, if not properly managed, can clog up storm drain systems and then cause a flood. We also have done a significant amount of work in intermunicipal data sharing between Milton and Braintree, because if the Braintree Dam lets go, that impacts Quincy. If they don't hold water back in the reservoir that's behind the South Shore Plaza, that impacts us significantly. If we're having a problem in West Quincy, the town of Milton can be impacted significantly in East Milton Square. So the water doesn't care where the city boundaries are, so our interaction with the neighboring communities has also been tremendously helpful. Through those programs, the Quincy has had significant results. As I indicated in 2017, the quote corrected maps had 8 formal map revisions where whole neighborhoods were corrected and had over 500 individual houses removed from the flood map, or removed from the requirement to buy flood insurance, and that's called a letter of map amendment. And we've had multi-year coordination every year since 2014 and 2017 to make sure that the maps continue to be preserved, that the advancements continue to be understood by FEMA, and that the methodology does not change unknowingly as happened in 2014. And I'm very proud to say that those positive results continue. The new maps that we've been presented with for 2025 have no backsliding on any of our previous revisions. Those new maps are, in my opinion, properly modeled for Quincy's Deep Rock Tunnel. This is a very important piece of infrastructure that in previous maps, we feel FEMA didn't properly qualify the flooding benefits of Quincy's Deep Rock Tunnel. There has been proper modeling of the Quincy Center Street flood relief system. It starts down by BJ's and takes water out of the whole Brook Road neighborhood, routing it directly to the Deep Rock Tunnel. And the result of that is 300 more individual houses will be removed when these floodplains go into effect. That means 300 more of our residents who are obligated to pay flood insurance if they have a mortgage no longer need to buy that flood insurance policy. They may choose to. If you do not live in the floodplain, but you choose to have a flood insurance policy, you certainly may buy that flood insurance policy. It is significantly cheaper than if you live in the floodplain. But we often hear from people saying, I can't buy flood insurance, I don't live in the floodplain. That is not correct. Some people may choose to buy flood insurance because they wish to protect their houses. It'll be significantly cheaper if they're out of the floodplain. One item that I hit on, which was the largest change from 2017 and all of the map revisions to now, is that behind Star Market in Quincy Square, there's a graphic of it here, the roadway going from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen is Bergen Parkway, and School Street goes from the bottom of the screen from left to right. But behind Star Market, there is a very important piece of infrastructure just hidden there. Sometimes when we're going down Bergen Parkway, as soon as you pass underneath School Street, you look to your left, you'll see a small little rooftop with a hatch on it. That's the location. This piece of infrastructure takes overflow from water entering Quincy from Braintree at BJ's and water that has gone all the way through Brook Road and Water Street, and it routes it through a deep rock tunnel under Quincy Center and out right behind our skateboard park in the area between Pond Street and Brackett Street. This piece of infrastructure we felt FEMA had never properly modeled. Looking at their technical data, really got very down in the weeds to make them understand how this system worked. But even empirically, we knew it may not be correct because they were convinced neighborhoods flood. They never flooded. We know where we flood. We know what floods. So I'm proud to say that the modeling change around this deep rock tunnel has now removed, in this neighborhood, it's about 200 houses. This is mostly Ward 4. But this is a sampling of some of the streets. The Brook Road, Water Street area, as of March 8th, 2025, will no longer be required to have flood insurance. They will be out of the map. So this is not all of the streets, but for those looking at the map, these are the houses under the orange. So it basically starts at the bottom of the screen at the Quincy Adams T Station, and the Deco building continues up through Penn Street, continues to Water and Brook Street, and then branches over to the left towards Brewer's Corner. This water now gets routed, or always has been routed, through the Deep Rock Tunnel. Now it is properly modeled. This is just one neighborhood that has been removed. We have, in almost every ward, we have some other 1 house, 2 houses, 3 houses removed. The at-home viewers may be wondering how they can check. On the city's website, if you go right to the first page on the city's website and you select the business tab just to the right of the city seal, underneath that tab there is a choice called the city's GIS property viewer. When you click on that property viewer, a technology screen, again called Geographical Information System, pops up, where you can enter in your address into a screen where you'll see the whole city, When you enter your address, it will zoom in onto your house, and you can select under the tab called Themes, Choices. You can actually check what ward am I in, what infrastructure is near my house, what voting precinct am I. As a civil engineer, I'm also happy you can check where am I in the 2017 flood maps or the 2025 flood maps. When you enter your name in and you select these themes, you will get a map of very high resolution, such as this map. I use this map as an example. This is Ballou Street in West Quincy. This was a topic of discussion in the council chambers for many years. Why does Ballou Street flood? On the left are the current maps, and even if you can't see the granularity of the houses, you can see how wide the floodplain is in the current maps. On the right is the new and correct maps. We've narrowed the floodplain significantly, so all of those houses that are under the blue on the left, but not under the blue on the right, will no longer require to pay flood insurance. Now, we've battled for this for a while because we know houses on Seneca and Wallace don't flood, and we do know some houses on Ballou flood, and they are now accurately mapped. And we know this because when we have a major flood, we go to these neighborhoods, we drive them, we figure it out, we catalog it, and all that data gets rolled into our reports back to FEMA. So for those at home who pay flood insurance and are around the edges, we would encourage them to go to the city's website. You can self-serve with respect to seeing if you are in the floodplain in the new maps. Again, if you stay in the floodplain in the new map, it doesn't mean that we have failed you. It means that I'll say in my opinion, I won't put the commissioner on the hook. In my opinion, as a professional engineer, you do have a risk of flooding, and flood insurance is probably a good consideration for you. So that is the update on the maps. From where we go from here, near-term actions is to get the word out to constituents. Right? This is although I feel like I'm explaining it simply, it is a confusing matter. Right? Managing the technology, understanding what the different themes mean can be challenging. But get the word out so that people can do their own homework, so that before July 8th, 2025, they will know if they're currently paying a couple extra $100 a month and a couple $1,000s a year in flood insurance, but they know they don't flood. They will be authorized to cancel that policy after June 8th, 2025. Our ask of this body is the way that you actually adopt the maps is that you adopt a modification to the zoning code 8.1, which is the city's floodplain overlay district ordinance. The new maps will be listed in that modified floodplain overlay district ordinance. There will be an advertisement requirement associated with any ordinance change, so we'd ask that this be moved for advertisement and, if appropriate, moved into ordinance committee. So when we get to the next item on the agenda, it really is tied to this presentation. And for long-term items, Quincy's doing great. I would say continue the programmatic approach to addressing the fact that we're a coastal city, the fact that we have some very important key brooks that are part of our stormwater management system, that we must manage construction appropriately so that we are continuing to allow stormwater to flow into stormwater basins and not basements, and we'll continue to coordinate with our neighboring communities. One last note that I always want to add is separate from the flood maps, Quincy participates in FEMA's community rating system. This is a separate program run by FEMA where communities that are very proactive in managing their flooding, communicating with constituents about flooding, implementing best management practices associated with flood management, are given a score, and if that score achieves a certain rate, Quincy's flood rate payers save money. I'm very proud to say Quincy is the top-ranked city in Massachusetts with respect to your score. You save your constituents 15% on their flood insurance bill right off the top. There's no other city greater. The only two communities, Wareham and Sandwich, get 20%. Nobody is saving more than 20%. So Quincy is really best in class with respect to the way we approach our flood insurance rating system. What that actually means is, right now you have about 3,500 flood insurance ratepayers. You save them $530,000. You can do that math quickly. It's real money spread across each and every ratepayer. And you get that credit because you are proactive, because you are well-managed. I do want to give kudos to City Engineer Paul Costello and to Engineer Chen Sang, who really stay on this program so that the constituents, even the ones who are at the seawall or in the floodplain, get a benefit that the city can provide for them by being well-run, well-organized, and well-managed. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions that the councilors may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. President recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Joe. This is great. Al, thank you so much for this. I just had a couple quick questions. So the FEMA coming in, obviously, it's fluctuated and changed, and with all of the weather in the world right now, or at least even the East Coast, you see how it's all growing and getting, it seemingly, everywhere you look, there's these natural events. Can FEMA come in and challenge what our discoveries are? Is that something that we're sure we're covered on, and this is something that we're able to really feel strongly about, that FEMA's not going to come in and say, no, you didn't meet this requirement, and there's a change that needs to be made to the map itself?
Great question. So these maps have now been settled with FEMA. The maps as posted will not change, so they will not contest our position. We do have significant number of meetings with them to get to these maps. So, for example, this body has approved and we have completed the Adams Shore Seawall Project, Ward 1, 2021. The benefits of that project are not on these maps because FEMA has not authorized that yet. So the technical interaction you're speaking of has happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And we fully expect in 5 or 6 years, when the Adams Shore seawall is approved by FEMA, and hopefully at that point the Manat Ave seawall is either well underway or completed, there'll be even additional benefits. But what you see on the screens and on the city's GIS system is the negotiated map settlement for the next period, would be 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so that was my next question, was it's usually 5 or 6 years when they review it, or are events that happen, or is it just when it's time, it's time?
When it's time, when FEMA starts the process, which they started actually 4 years ago, mm-hmm. We've worked our way to coming to this conclusion today. I'm sorry, I may not have answered your question, Council.
No, you didn't. No, that's good. So in the unlikely event people aren't riveted at their TV right now watching, and the outreach that the councils will all do to reach out, will they be notified? Will the houses and the neighborhoods and the people be notified by mail, or is it just they need to check the website and?
No, we have the ability through the GIS system to notify the people who are out by mail.
By mail, okay.
So that would come from the commissioner's office. Yes. So we have that ability. What can be our challenge from time to time is we may notify, whether we notify tenants, not owners, or owners, not tenants. We also are often challenged with condominium associations. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, if along C Street, if you're in a condominium along C Street and you live on the top floor, you still may be obligated to buy flood insurance based upon your homeowners association, because the elevator and other common area entities are in the floodplain. So I'm not confident we can get to everybody who pays flood insurance. I'm confident we can get to the ones that are obvious from the mapping. So we do want to make sure we get the information out there.
And the GIS website right now, it's live, updated, real time.
It was live and updated real time. Those who've turned away from their screen at home are now on their PC looking it up.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. President recognizes Council McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Joseph.
Good evening, Counselor.
First, I want to also kudos to yourself and Al, but Paul and Chen, they do have to stay on top of it. I mean, these are things that, don't get all the glory. And behind the scenes, you're saving over $500,000, I think, if I look at that number right in the back, which is significant. So thank you very much. Joe, just a couple of questions. I'm on the page with the strand with the pump house. I know that one's brand new. Did we put any other brand new ones in? Because I knew we were talking about other pump houses down the road in regards to the Post Island area, et cetera, but I didn't know if that was the only one or what the plan was going forward.
So this is not our newest pump station. Our newest stormwater pump station is on the end of Broad Street, feeling a little Ward 1 centric at the moment.
Right.
But at the end of Broad Street, there is a pump station that drains all of the excess water from Southern Artery, Russell Park, Windmere. It's designed to keep the water in the wetlands between the high school and Faxon Field, but it will drain the extra water that could inundate those neighborhoods. The Post Island concept for a pump station many years ago is still being truthed out with respect to the way the wall was constructed and the benefits of the Manat Ave seawall. One benefit of the way how FEMA moves so slowly is we do have time to test our completed projects.
Right.
And, one way to look at it is we are in a testing period associated with the Adams Shore seawall.
Yeah, and I know that seawall has been, dramatic changes in regards to flooding on C Street, the drainage, the outfall pipes, the number of new ones we put in. It's worked very well. But I was just wanted to get an idea on that, if that was simmering somewhere. It's great that we end up with these positive results. Usually, I don't have any faith in FEMA going this way. It's usually going the other way. But when you look at that Bellew Street example of the floodplain in Ward 4 that now is so narrow, that's significant, and that's great for the residents in that area. The Quincy Deep Rock Tunnel, you talked about, mentioned a little bit about remodeling. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Is that going to be a big project? Is that we're doing it over?
Actually, thank you for asking that question. I probably was unclear. When I said remodeling, I meant hydraulic modeling on paper with computer software systems, very exciting to me.
Okay.
But not remodeling such as remodeling a building or a living room or remodeling the Great Hall. So it's I don't want to get technical, but it's about the input and output parameters of a hydrologic and hydraulic model, when I said
So what
remodel.
we have there physically is up to speed?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's well-maintained. They just had the inputs and outputs incorrect in the previous maps, in our opinion. We were finally able to convince them of that.
And I don't know if this is a question for you or the commissioner, just as we stay on that, we know how, that dictates the flow all the way under Quincy and all the way down to Pond Street, but that Bigelow Street area, is there any, I know we're doing some development down there and et cetera. I know it came up during one of my community meetings about a new development that's going in by the nursing home. Was there any talk about any redesign with the brook in regards down there? Because there was talk, and I don't know if it was just a thought or it was more than a thought, was the land that's next to the old Tile City. When it gets down at Bigelow Street, it kind of jets out, the path of the brook. And there was talk of possibly going straight across and making it a little wider and a little deeper to capture more capacity during a big storm, or when we have a high tide, everything, all the elements are lined up correctly. But I didn't know if that was out there at all.
That is absolutely out there. What the council is referring to is there is a design and some more hydraulic modeling on paper to widen Town Brook from Miller Stiles Road all the way to Elm Street.
Yeah.
So underneath Bigelow, effectively underneath Bagnell Auto Supply, very sharp bend at Elm Street and Brackett, where it then daylights to the large marsh behind the Town Brook House. That concept still exists to the point where DPW and planning use it as a reference. So in the current redevelopment of what we think of as Quincy Nursing and Rehab, which is 5 to 11 McGrath Highway, the new redevelopment is built in a way where the expansion of that brook is not limited. They built, their design was approved factoring in that if someday the city needs to widen that brook on the backside of their property or on Bigelow Street, we are not prevented from doing that. The same philosophy would apply if somebody ever wanted to move into Bagnell Auto Supply and expand that. I think that's a great corner for something nice in Quincy, but we would make sure that they don't prevent us from widening Town Brook in that section, because we know over time, eventually that project will need to be done. Potentially a redevelopment partner would join with us in a public-private partnership where they widen a portion on their property and we widen other portions. That would assist Miller Stile Road, from the Pocket Park on Mechanic Street
Yeah.
and Bigelow, which again, from time to time, still do back up and flood. The brook is very narrow through there.
No, it's all great news, Joe, and thanks for the hard work. And like I said, I never have faith we're gonna, once they got us with these flood maps, to go the other way is again, kudos to Al's staff, to you, Paul, Chen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you.
President recognizes Councilor Harris.
Thank you. Joe, always a pleasure. I mean, your hard work, and I just have to say thank you. This is very encouraging, your work and the DPW's team, especially led by a Bosco guy by the name of Paul Costello, Don Bosco Bear, class of 79. So I'm showing my age again. But so much great work such as this in this city gets really, really overlooked because of other smoke and mirror issues that get thrown into the mix. This really hits home with people. It really makes a real difference when it helps, especially the cost of flood insurance with folks that really don't need it, or their rates can go down because they've been paying so much. The same thing, it's all one and the same. And I can't thank you all enough, Al, your team, Joe, your team, top notch. But I'm going to be reaching out to you folks to assist me, as you had mentioned about getting the message out to the constituents, and that has to be consistent. So, and really, I'd really like to get it out as soon as we can, because of course, I know that I have to, me and my wife were, she just texted me and I sent her something. We're paying, this is just a, personal note, we're paying a high rate for insurance because of, living in Squantum, and I see this map, and I'm really would love a really better, I can look it up, but when you see it, Council McCarthy's area, everybody's area right along the beach, Council Minton, it's a lot blue. So it's great to see some white there, and if we can get that people to get a few more dollars in their pocket that they don't have to spend, we need to get that message out, as you just said, and my intention is to get that out at ASAP over the next few days if I could. And again, I just got to say thank you again, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank-
Thank you, Counselor Harris. President recognizes Counselor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Shea, for the presentation. Some interesting points, and it seems like we're on the, maybe ahead of the curve on some of this, so that's great, and thank you for the debrief on the issues. I did, Councilor McCarthy hosted a community meeting on 11 McGrath Highway. I know that the 5 to 11 McGrath, I know that the proposal, as planned anyway, and as we heard from constituents, a lot of their questions were surrounding the flooding on Bigelow and Miller Style. And I know that most of those residents left that meeting feeling optimistic about the plans, and that they thought these plans are a step in the right direction with the brook, with any of the potential flooding, and for that area in general, notwithstanding, some of the traffic concerns. So that was great. And thank you for touching on that as a part of this. I had a couple of, just to clarify some minor questions. So we have on slide 7, this presentation says 300 more individual houses will be removed from the floodplain. Are there any homes being added?
There are maybe a half a dozen homes being added as one-offs, sprinkled around the city. I think there were 2 on Furnace Brook Parkway. I can get the list.
Okay.
But that, the addition of homes, which we also feel is correct, is really de minimis compared to the removal of whole neighborhoods. But there are maybe a half a dozen being added.
Okay. And so the onus seems to be on the property owner to contact their insurance company after the red tape. Is that correct?
Actually, yes, the way that we normally see it happen is mortgage companies monitor this very, very closely, and mortgage companies notify the people with whom they have a mortgage when they've been moved into the floodplain. Many people, there's a little confusion at times that people feel if they think if they live in the floodplain, therefore they must have flood insurance, but that's actually a misunderstanding. It's the mortgage companies that require you to buy flood insurance. If you own your property outright, right, good for you, that's a wonderful thing. You can choose whether you want to have flood insurance or not. It's your own choice. But if you get a mortgage with a company and you live in the floodplain, the mortgage company requires it. So it's actually the mortgage companies that drive the requirement for flood insurance. So mortgage companies monitor this very closely, and they'll most likely hear from their mortgage company almost immediately.
If they're being added or if they're being, I think I know the answer to this one, but if they're being added or if they're being removed?
If they're being added, they certainly are going to hear immediately.
Okay.
If they're being removed, we would hope they will hear relatively early in the process that this is no longer required.
Okay. But it would be suggested that, of course, they confirm.
They absolutely can be
Okay.
proactive.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ash. President recognizes Counselor DeBono.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, Al, thank you for coming in with your presentation tonight. Good to hear the other counselors. I remember back in 2016, 2017, when they did the revised provisions of this, it was mass hysteria in the city of Quincy.
Yes.
A lot of people that had never been in the flood zone before were put into the flood zone, and they were coming up to these workshops throughout the city of Quincy, here in the down here in City Hall and all these different places, talking about I've never been in the flood zone. I've lived in my house for 30 to 40 years. How did this happen? I remember attending these, and it was a hot topic back when I was first elected. And we went to these workshops, and we had to get them revised again, I guess. It's good to hear some good news today. We've done a lot of flood mitigation over the years, whether it be in the form of the seawalls, Chickatawba all the way down to the neck, or whether it be pumping stations. We've done a lot of extensive work, obviously, in Ward 4. Prior to Councilor Devine, we had Councilor Palmucci that did a lot of work. So we've done a lot over this term of time. You know, he talked about, brought up FEMA. You know, I know the hurricanes have come through. You know, you had the Sandy, you had the Harvey, prior to that, you had Katrina. So they had to produce some type of funding at some point. And if you go into some untapped areas, I can understand. So we did a really good job back then. And it's good to see where we've evolved into today in 2025. And I thank you and Alan and your team for this type of work, because the city of Quincy, with 26 miles of coastline, we obviously have a lot of water that we border here. So I remember before, some years ago, folks were, you know, the policy is quite, you know, they never had a policy before. As you said, if you own your house outright or you own your property outright, you don't have to necessarily get the flood insurance, where these mortgage companies or these lenders will make you go get the flood insurance to qualify for the loan, I guess I could say. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of folks were scrambling around or paying down their mortgage to get out of that situation. Do you foresee any surprises here in 2025 when this comes out? Is it May 1st, 2025? Is that, or July?
July 8th.
July 8th. Do you foresee any surprises with folks that have never been in the flood zone before are in the flood zone?
I don't really. Again, maybe the half a dozen or dozen houses, which in the normal course of correcting the maps, when we correct the maps, we're not just looking to remove people. If they are incorrect and a house should be in because flood insurance is probably the best choice for that house, they would be put back in. So, yeah, for a small handful of people, the flood maps are correct. That means they're now in. We really do focus our attention on getting them correct for the people who are needlessly paying for flood insurance, as opposed for the people who are fortunate to slip past the flood insurance goalie, so to speak.
You talked a little bit about the Adams Shore seawall and the Manat Ave seawall. Mm-hmm. When will those go into effect? Because we've done extensive amount of, I mean, how much money, of millions upon millions of dollars that we've spent on mitigation and helping folks correct the flood situation that we had in 2018, where we had flooding an island in Howes Neck at some point. When do those come online? We've spent $18 million on the entire project.
So we have two potential options. The longer-term option is once the Manat Ave seawall is completed. I'm going to say order of magnitude, let's say that's 4 to 5 years away, although Councilor McCarthy and Mayor Koch would like it faster. Then the models would be updated inclusive of the two walls together, because they do act as a single flood protection barrier. Right? Many of us have driven down C Street. We've gotten to the Howes Neck Rock and seen how the wall steps down and thought, maybe this is me, I'm an engineer, but thought, well, isn't the ocean just going to flow around that edge? And it will until the Manat Ave seawall is built. But in the interim, we were unsuccessful, to Councilor Campbell's point, in getting them to include the Adams Shore seawall this round. We could try to do a letter of map revision between now and the next maps to see if they would adopt the incremental benefit. It won't be the full benefit of the wall, because the Adams Shore seawall and the Manat Ave seawall do need to work in concert. They need to work together. Otherwise, the water is just coming down Manat and Babcock, and we're going to lose C Street anyways.
We talked a little bit about outfall piping and all these other the mechanisms that we did in the mitigation process. Mm-hmm. Do they take into consideration the start of it, maybe the Chickatobit side, where they've already formed that seawall? Is that in this?
In this case, they did not.
They did not.
That was our position, is that there's unquestionably, there are current results from the Adams Shore seawall. Unquestionable. But in this specific round of maps, they did not include that benefit. So really, that's honestly what we're working on for the next round.
The next round. When do you foresee that?
If we waited until, normally they do them on, again, a 5 to 7 year cycle. But if the Manat Ave seawall is completed faster, that's when we would go in for an interim revision, what's called a letter of map revision
Okay.
in the interim.
Okay, okay, that makes sense, okay. We've done a lot here in Quincy, we really have. We've done I think I could say we've done our part. I guess I could say, 2018 rolled around in March, and we had a lot of flooding here with the help of Governor Baker and here in Quincy with all our elected officials. I remember being out there with the mayor, with Council McCarthy, going down these streets, especially Post Island Road, which was devastating. And if a lot of people lost their houses. So what we've done up to today has been an unbelievable amount. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor DeBona. President recognizes Councilor Minton.
Joe, in Wallaston Center, the CVS parking lot, that seems to flood a lot, and it seems to have a bearing on future building. Any update on that?
Yes, there, in the Wollaston Urban Renewal Plan that this body adopted in the last session, there is a concept for a stormwater pumping station to be placed in Wollaston. So the puddle that's been in the parking lot behind CVS and Wally Wine for my entire life, we all know it, we know it well. That is below high tide in many tide occurrences, so it may be hard to map as the tide comes up all the way down at the ocean that you're actually below the high tide line. So a pumping station concept was developed, was brought forward to the state. The state agreed that in the future, a pumping station to pump the water maybe down Willett, probably not down Beach or any of the Elms, but maybe down through the Willett neighborhood. You have to pump that water out, because with the tide being up, it's never going to actually flow out. We are now in discussions that we feel that the pump station may be better suited in the MBTA parking lot. Put in a large chamber to store water in the MBTA parking lot. Although that would free up space behind CVS, Wally Wine, the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, for the purposes of some sort of beneficial redevelopment. Working with the MBTA is also a very slow process. So the T parking lot, in my opinion, is when you balance redevelopment with hydrology is the right location. It connects us with a partner that is slow and methodical in the way that they approach these things. But there is a concept in place, very similar to the Bigelow Street concept. The planning department, and I'll pick on Joe King, who's here tonight, the planning department is aware, and we will really endeavor to ensure that any redevelopment that happens doesn't thwart our ability to have a pumping station and public infrastructure to benefit all of the Wollaston Village, regardless of where the pump station itself finally ends up.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Minton. President recognizes Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, just on, and I know this isn't a Manat Ave seawall meeting, but just FYI to my colleagues, especially Councilor DeBona and Councilor Campbell who live down there, we've started borings. I'll let you speak to it, Joe, on what we're doing right now, or Al, and where we're headed with that, which is hopefully sooner than later.
So we have made a lot of progress on the Manat Ave seawall. It's probably 25% designed. We hope to have the final design done in this year. We've received some initial grant money from FEMA. I believe it's $3 million. This body voted some matching money for that. So we're moving along. We have hired Tetra Tech engineering firm. So I think in the next probably 6 months, we'll have a pretty good plan moving forward for that. So we're looking at, obviously the Manat Ave, the lower portion of Manat Ave is a critical area, but also the Brinsley area down that end. Those people really get hit hard. So we're trying to focus on those areas mostly, and we're looking at different options and obviously trying to come up with what the cost may be. But we're moving forward.
Yeah, and as the commissioner says, Brinsley, Orleans, this is an area that, if you're familiar with Manor Ave, it elevates, most of the way up until you get to Oswego, and then which is a cut-through street over to Babcock, but then it plummets down, and there's houses that are literally right on the seawall down below, and that's that area that the commission is talking about, and it really, it's hard to defend, but it needs
It's
defense.
a critical area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you.
President recognizes Councilor Liang.
Thank you. Just a quick question for the information that's going to be going out to residents. So I know the website is already available to be translated, so I'm not concerned about that. But the notices that will be going out to residents, I always like to ask and just make sure that they will be going out in multiple languages, correct?
They will absolutely be translated. One of the wonderful benefits of the great technical work of working with Chen Sang from DPW is he also does our translations. He meets a lot of people at the counter. He's a tremendous resource.
Great.
So they will be translated as well, yes.
Okay, sounds good. I know that I know the mayor had funded now for the last 5 years, I believe, monies and resources available specifically for translation services. And so if your staff member is, busy doing other work that he should be doing and not necessarily with the translation services, I know that we have that resource available that the mayor provided. So if we could tap into that, please feel free to do so. But
Thank you
great,
very
just wanted to
much.
make sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you very much for the presentation. I know the majority of this work was done prior to, actually, probably all of us joining. Okay, now I've started, so give me just a second. But it's great to know that good, positive work continues to happen in the background. So I appreciate the update. I'm sure the public does too.
Thank you, Mr. President.
President recognizes Councilor Devine.
And thank you very much. Thank you, Joe Shea, for coming in, and Commissioner Grazioso. Appreciate all your efforts. Just a light correction is Baloo is actually in Ward 3 now. It's kind of confusing for a lot of people. Even the residents, they still don't know. Sometimes they think they're in Ward 4. But year ago, or last August, it changed. That's not really that important, but I just wanted to throw it out there and start letting people start figuring it out.
We'll be sure to credit the Ward 3 counselor with this success.
Huh?
We'll credit the Ward 3 counselor with this success.
Yeah, that'd be good for them. Speaking of Town Brook and the possible expansion, it sounds great, because I know people don't recognize it, but just because we're not on the water in Ward 4, we actually have 7 of the 11 watersheds that Quincy has, which a watershed is which the water moves to an area, and it funnels it like a ski area right into Ward 4. I think 5 are going to Furnace Brook and 2 going to Town Brook. In front of Joe's Market, we get some flooding. I know that the substantial construction going on there, part of the mitigation was that they were to repair some of those drain pipes. I know that they started working on it. Have they completed, 2 14-inch pipes or something that they put in?
I'm unaware if they've completed that, but that is correct. As part of the Avalon redevelopment, there were off-site drainage improvements
Yeah,
to be done on Center Street and Brook Road. That's
Okay.
one piece of a chain of pipes that go all the way through Kincaid Park to Water Street and out.
yeah.
So if we could have a developer who not only pays into the II rehab fund, but fixes 1 or 2 links in a chain that's causing flooding, that certainly is a great benefit
Right.
for us as a city.
Because it is a tough spot right there. And then the work we did on Furnace Brook over by, behind St. Mary's Church, will that future, like, let's say in 5 years, we'll know if it helped at all. Will that change possibly the flood map for some of those people?
I believe that it will. Yes, that's actually another great example. I know we focused on seawalls, but the long-term operation of that spillway, that's a technical term for FEMA that we created, but to hold the water behind St. Mary's Cemetery on Furnace Brook Parkway rather than letting it zip right to Ulrich Road.
Yeah,
Over time, I do hope we'll be able to prove the full benefit of that project and narrow the floodplain elsewhere. Because we're expand the floodplain in that section and narrow it elsewhere by holding the water in that area.
it's a large area to hold water. It's, It also seems to slow the water down. I've watched it. I go there during and after some major rainstorms, and it's pretty impressive. If you look proud of it, the water's high and running very fast, and then as soon as it goes under the little bridge at the road into the cemetery, it slows down and it starts to spread out, which was the idea, and it seems to be working. But I do have a bunch of neighbors and constituents that literally their house might only have like 4 feet of their property in the flood zone, yet they still have to pay. So I'm hoping that in 4 or 5 years, maybe we might be able to adjust that 4 feet, you know.
Actually,
Going that way.
may I speak to that?
Yes, please do.
Would encourage anybody the floodplain touches your property but not your house, reach out to DPW, because there is an opportunity to apply for a reduction in flood insurance by using the city's technology to show that what you actually insure with flood insurance is the occupied dwelling. You're not insuring a shed, you're not insuring an empty garage, you're not insuring a driveway. So there are times where if you have a property that the floodplain touches only your land, not the occupied structure, some mortgage companies will relieve you of your obligation for flood insurance. Not all.
Yeah,
Generally, the national flood insurance, if you bought your flood insurance on the internet, they're not releasing you from anything. But if you worked with a flood representative, a local insurer, it's worth pursuing. So to encourage you to call the DPW number, ask for Chen, or somebody on the team can help navigate that unique situation.
I think now that you said that, you just sparked a memory. When I moved in 20 years ago, we had to buy flood insurance, and it was exorbitant. And my insurance agent happened to be my uncle, and he had to call the insurance agency and say, hey, are you going to replant this grass, or are you going to put trees in? Because you're evaluating every inch of his property, not the dwelling. So anybody out there listening or concerned with it, you should definitely make sure to reach out to your agent, make sure they're doing the best and that you're not paying for something that's not going to come back to you. So it's a great point. And I believe we have people, FEMA actually has websites you can reach out to, right? Is there counseling for it or something?
They do. FEMA has a whole host of online resources.
Yeah,
What we recommend is that people blend the insurance companies like Floodright or FEMA website with the city's GIS server, because the granularity or the specificity that the city makes available to their constituents online does not exist in FEMA's databases.
yeah.
You know, I describe it as FEMA makes their maps from the window of a 747. Sometimes it's really hard to get the nuance. Sometimes you have to actually count 7 houses down from the corner. Whereas if you go to the city's GIS viewer and you activate your property in the layers, it's very clear where the
Yeah.
line is relative to your house, driveway, your neighbors.
Right, yeah, very good. And then as far as talking about neighboring towns, I live on the Furnace Brook, even though it's culvert at my house, but there's a manhole that pops off there, and Milton was shedding a lot of water towards Bunker Hill Lane, and since we requested years ago that they cease and assist, they did, and it's dramatically changed. So thank you for working with the neighboring towns, because it's important, because they just chuck their water wherever they want, as long as it's not in their boot, you know? And it worked. It's not just that, also, it's to the DPW. I know when we're going to get a big rainstorm, because my neighbor's yard gets a big DPW truck that drives in, pulls the manhole cover off, and clears everything out. They're religious about it, so I know how hard you guys work, and nobody sees it. Like, I think Council McCarthy or somebody said, it's not glamorous, it's, you know, nobody's sitting there looking at it, but it's the puttering stuff that needs to be done to make sure that we don't have these issues, and you're doing a great job on getting the little things done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Trent. President recognizes Councilor Harris.
I apologize for coming back. Joe, you just mentioned database, and there's going to be a general letter that's going to go out, but my concern, for instance, to go on the website, we have seniors, we have folks that aren't tech savvy, my hand's up, that good, is there a way that we can sift out folks that are changed or gone on, so there's like a half a dozen, but what about the folks that are out? Are you able to get me that information where I can send them out individual letters to make sure that they know they have an opportunity? Is that something that can possibly happen?
Absolutely. I don't mean to speak for the commissioner, but the database can be sorted by ward, very simply.
That'd be great, but, any assistance,
Happily.
that guy that had his hand up that is not that tech savvy, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Councilor Harris. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Item number 2, Mr. President. Excuse me, 2025-027, it's an order amendment to the zoning code 8.1 floodplain overlay district.
Motion to move to ordinance,
Okay.
seconded by Councilor DeBona. On the motion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Mitten. President Kane.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is 2025-028. It's an order for Municipal School Buildings Authority Statement of Interest, Point Webster Middle School.
Motion to approve made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Devine. Mr. Clerk?
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Mitten. President Kane.
Yes. And
9 members.
I'm just, point of privilege, I'm going to recognize the mayor's representative to talk a little bit about what we just voted on and the next 3 that we will be voting on.
Thank you. Just briefly, this body is very familiar, and I assume that, that's why we're moving so quickly through this. This is statement of interest for 4 accelerated repair programs at various schools across the city. As this body knows, the city has been very successful through the MSBA's accelerated repair program over the years. Some of the new buildings get a lot of the attention, obviously, for obvious reasons, but there have been virtually every building outside of the new ones that we've built has been touched in some way by the MSBA accelerated repair program, which works the same way as the new school building program does. We applied to get in the process, which is the step for these next 3 orders and the previous one. We get into the process, we're granted into the program, and then we come back before the body for the appropriation request to fund said projects.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And Commissioner of Public Buildings, Paul Hines is here in case anyone has any questions. Otherwise, Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Counselor, order is 2025-029, order for Municipal School Building Authority Statement of Interest, Francis W. Parker Elementary School.
Thank you. Motion approved made by Councilor Campbell, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Mitten. President Kane.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item is number 5, 2025-030, an order for a Municipal School Buildings Authority Statement of Interest, Broad Meadows Middle School.
Motion approved made by Councilor Campbell, seconded by Councilor Devine. On the motion, just even to note that some of these replacements as itemized on each of these orders are replacement, renovation, and modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor Mitten. President Kane.
Yes.
Nine members.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next item, please.
Next item is 2025-031. It's an order, Municipal School Buildings Authority Statement of Interest, Atlantic Middle School.
Motion approved made by Counsel Campbell, seconded by Counsel McCarthy. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President Kane.
Yes.
Nine members.
Thank you. Next item, please, Mr. Clerk.
The next item is 2025-032, an order for nominations for Park and Recreation Board appointments.
Okay, we will be nominating Park and Recreation Board appointments. We will be nominating these individually. Does any counselor want to nominate? President recognizes Counsel McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to open the nominations.
Motion to open nominations has been made by Counsel McCarthy, seconded by Counsel DeBona. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Then I'd like to place the name of Paul Bergoli in as a candidate for the Park and Rec Board. I'd like to nominate him.
The first candidate for Park and Recreation Board is Paul Bergoli. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counsellor Campbell. Mr. Clerk, please.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President Kane.
Yes. Okay. Does any other counselor have a nomination? President recognizes Counsellor Devine.
I'd like to nominate Kevin Esdale.
Say again?
I'd like to nominate Kevin Esdale.
Counsellor Devine has nominated Kevin Esdale. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counsellor McCarthy. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
Nine members.
President recognizes Counsellor Campbell.
I'd like to nominate Thomas Lester.
Counsellor Campbell's nominated Thomas Lester. Do I have a second? Seconded by Counsellor DeBona. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President Kane.
Yes.
Nine members.
I'd like to make a motion to close nominations.
Motion to close nominations has been made by Counsellor McCarthy, seconded by Counsellor DeBona. All those in favor? Those opposed? Ayes have it. We are done with that. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Next item is 2025-033. It's a resolution declaring support for the preservation of the federal tax exemption of municipal bonds.
So, for my colleagues and those at home, this is actually a very important resolution that I'd like to advance. So one of the things in the federal government that is going through this 119th Congress is the need to reapprove the tax exempt status for municipal bonds. So as people may know, tax exempt bonds are the primary mechanism by which we fund capital work. So all the FEMA work we talked about, roadway work, infrastructure work, MSBA work, most of the things that power our city. So if this does not get passed in Congress, we risk paying a very high cost of capital, probably almost double to what we borrow at today. So I hope to have all of your support in this. This is just an expression of interest that we'll send to our federal delegation in the state, asking them to support this in Congress. And I do want to recognize Eric Mason, the CFO of the city, who's here, who I know spends a lot of time thinking about these things. And if you'd like to come up and just speak to maybe a couple of important data points that highlight the importance of reaffirming this tax exempt status with the federal government.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President. Good evening to the entire council. Just to reiterate everything Council President said, it is quite a dramatic increase. Currently, the spread, or the difference between two interest rates between taxable and non-taxable debt, is anywhere from 150 to 200 basis points. That is exactly as the council president said, anywhere from 75% to 100% increase.
And Eric, when you basis point doesn't mean much to a lot of people, so. If
Much like you said, I think about this too
people
much.
understand interest rates.
That's about 1.5% to 2% interest rate. So, yes, no, it would be quite dramatic. The other thing that's important to remember is that it would also make our debt incredibly non-maneuverable on our balance sheet, because once you remove that taxability, all the value of that people are holding in Quincy debt suddenly becomes very unattractive because it's now assuming a much lower interest rate. So it wouldn't just be a higher interest rate, like, add 1.5%, 2% to it. It would actually be add 3 to 4% to it, because now there's less flexibility in the secondary market to sell that debt. And then the city would be competing against a smaller pool of buyers. So in some cases, it actually inhibit our ability to quickly access the market. Just as Council President said, it will be quite a dramatic change.
I mean, it would be a dramatic change for cities and towns across the country. This isn't just a Quincy thing. This is how, cities and towns grow. So this is a very important thing for the continued growth of our city, but also for the growth of our nation, as most of the borrowing needs come from cities and towns directly. So if anyone has any questions, Eric's here now. Motion approved made by Councilor Yang, seconded by Councilor Campbell. Not seeing anything in the motion. Then, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Yang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Counselor Mitten. Yes. President Kane.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Eric. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Last item is item number 9, 2025-034. It's a gift for $1,600 from various donatees to DARE.
Motion approved made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor DeBona. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona. Yes. Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Yang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Counselor Mitten. Yes. President Kane.
Yes. That concludes our regularly scheduled agenda for the meeting. Approval of previous meeting minutes. We don't have any, but thank you. We'll have them at the next meeting. Communications and reports from mayor, other city officers, and city boards, seeing none. Unfinished business and preceding meeting, seeing none. Reports of committees, seeing none. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. President recognizes Councilor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to take a moment and speak about and extend the council's, certainly my own, and I'm sure most, if not, I'm sure all of the council, but I know a number of my colleagues who attended the services of Edward J. Teddy Hartnett III, affectionately known as Uncle Teddy. And he passed at the age of 79 last Sunday, February 23rd, 2025, at Tufts Medical Center in Boston. Teddy was born in Chelsea to the late Mary Louise McLaughlin and maiden name McLaughlin, and Edward J. Mickey Hartnett Jr. Raised and educated in Charlestown, he was a graduate of Boston English High School, class of 1963. He lived in Quincy for the past 50 years, spending most of those years in Quincy Point. He loved the City of Presidents and enjoyed attending community events and supporting veterans and first responders. Teddy proudly served in the Army National Guard of Massachusetts. He was employed with the Charles Stark Draper Laboratory in Cambridge for over 45 years. He began his career in the mailroom and worked in various capacities before becoming administrator of the reprographics department. He retired in 2008. Following his retirement, worked as a resource officer at Quincy College, shuttle driver at the Adams Inn, and a poll worker for the City of Quincy Elections Department. Teddy was a longtime member of the Quincy Lodge of Elks, where he made many friendships. He was a Boston sports fan, an avid bowler, and belonged to several bowling leagues over the years, where he took on the roles of president and treasurer. Teddy enjoyed live Irish music and fun times with family and friends across many establishments in Quincy and in Boston. Most of all, he was devoted to his family, especially his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, supporting all of their many activities and accomplishments. Beloved husband of the late Marie Keefe Hartnett, devoted father of Edward J. E.J. Hartnett IV, and Greg T. Hartnett, both of Quincy Police Department, and also Dawn Marie Kelly and her husband Robert of East Bridgewater, who Dawn was mentioned today as being the favorite of the family. So I felt, after the great words of remembrance and eulogy that Greg said today, I think she would want us to know that as well as would Uncle Teddy. So loving grandfather of Haley Hartnett, Edward Hartnett, Nicole Hartnett, Scott O'Brien, twins Maxwell and Matthew, Chloe Kelly, and Jason Kelly. Cherished great-grandfather of Lena, Remy, Gracie, and Ella. I know it would be impossible not to see Uncle Teddy and have a smile on your face and reach out for a hug. He was known as the Candy Man, also giving out candy to everybody that he knew and saw and around the neighborhood and beyond. And I think also it made me laugh to think when Greg said today that everybody, a lot of people would save a lot of money on their dentist bills because he won't be there to give out sweet treats. Just somebody who makes you think about the good in the city and the people and the generations of families that are here raising their families and really become the fabric of the community. So certainly my condolences to the Hartnett family. Beautiful send-off the last 2 days, and all my prayers and well wishes.
Thanks, Councilor Ash. President recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just real quick, this past week, we had the Quincy High and North Quincy High girls basketball teams advance in the state tournament. And tomorrow, actually Wednesday, 5:30 at Quincy High School gym, Quincy High takes on King Philip, I believe, and North Quincy High takes on someone. Archbishop Williams.
Doesn't
That's right,
matter.
Archie's, yeah, no, Archbishop Williams. So Quincy High plays at 5:30. Hopefully you can responsibly get in a car and go over to North Quincy and support both teams. But the girls are playing great basketball. It's great to see for the city. It's really something that, to see the student body and the community come out and support them, it's great. So I just wanted to extend that. And then finally, some great wishes. We missed it, I think, in the last one, but on February 12th, we had a member of our council become a grandfather. William James McCarthy was born to Councilor Dave McCarthy. Congratulations. Grandpa?
No, Papa.
Papa. All right. Well, congratulations.
Amongst other names, my wife called me.
That's one of the names you called. Wanted to extend congratulations to Papa McCarthy over there, and welcome William James.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilor Campbell.
You named after me, James.
Would love to be at either of those games tomorrow night, except Councilor Devine and I are hosting a community meeting at the Common Market at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. About a proposed development across the street from the Common Market Restaurant. Letters have gone out to residents in Ward 4 and in Ward 3. Hope to see you there. Motions, orders, and resolutions? Seeing none. Scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings. Okay, our next regularly scheduled council meeting is Monday, March 17th at 6:30 p.m. We'll see you then. Motion to adjourn made by Councilor Yang. All those in favor? Have a good evening.